we do have the recording that is on, and it looks like it has started. So thank you everyone for being here with us tonight. We are really, really excited about this live stream on women's health and self-care, specifically for women of color. And we, again, so elated to be here with you all tonight. And I just wanted to give a quick introduction. My name is Wildalise Bermudez. I'm on the Hartford City Council, and this event would not have been possible with our colleagues and contributors. And to continue with the introduction, I will turn it over to Corinne Prescott.
Hello, everyone. Hello. I am so excited to be in this space of Black and Brown women. And my name's Corinne Prescott, not Karen. No offense to any Karens, but I'm not Karen, I'm Corinne. And my pronouns are she, her. And I am the founder of Power Up CT. And I'm super excited to be here. I'm a mom, a single mom. I'm queer. I am disabled, but lowercase DIS and uppercase abled. And I'm just really excited to have this safe space, especially being in a state like Connecticut. And this is actually probably one of the first times that I've been in a space like this. And so I hope that we continue this as we continue to fight for justice and the liberation of our people. Thank you.
Next, we'll be hearing from Madison Frame.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Awesome. My name is Madison Frame. I am a young Black woman. I work for Councilwoman Bermudez and Councilman Josh Mictum here at City Council. I also run my own business. It's a photography and art curation business. So I do that as well. I'm also a sister, a daughter, and a female friend to a lot of men who constantly come to me with questions. A lot of females who come to me with questions too. So I'm very happy to be part of this. I'm very excited to have this discussion. That's why I'm sitting here smiling so much. So I'm really excited for this. So I'll let it continue.
Next, Melina Floyd.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melina. I go by she, her, or they, them pronouns. I am a recruiting coordinator full-time and an activist on the side. I like to listen to music. I like to have lots of talks with people, and I'm really excited to have this space as well. As Corinne said, having a space when you're in a state like this, in a time like this, where people can have that freedom to speak is very important. And so I was very excited to be asked to be part of this. And I am excited to see what everyone's answers and questions are.
And we have some amazing women who are healers. They are spiritual practitioners. They are Reiki practitioners and masters. They come to us from many different angles in terms of the holistic practices that they bring forth. And we are really blessed to have them on today and to be sharing with us their practice and how we could take in some of that knowledge, that wisdom, and incorporate it into our daily lives. And so now we want to make sure that we introduce them. I will be introducing the first two, followed by Madison, who will be introducing the next two panelists, then followed by Melina and Corinne. So for our first panelists for tonight, we have Akila Bar, who is a yoga instructor and shamanic practitioner. Akila Bar is a passionate yoga instructor, shamanic practitioner, Reiki master, and a 12-step recovery facilitator. She motivates individuals to discover their authentic and healthiest selves, incorporating her knowledge of ancient and sacred healing practices. Her close attention to breathe and movement stemmed from her adolescent years of running. Akila began exploring alternative modalities of health and healing since 2016. She gravitated to both yoga and meditation as a form of healing and relaxation. She began instructing trauma-informed yoga in 2016. Finding yoga has been a blessing that has allowed her to share the tools to release physical and emotional patterns of suffering. I also want to introduce with us tonight Dr. Mary Tracy, who is a naturopath and acupuncturist. Dr. Mary Tracy studied biology with a minor in chemistry at Southern Connecticut State University. It was during her undergraduate studies that her passion for health was ignited. After taking various public health and medical anthropology courses, Dr. Tracy started to acknowledge the incredible need for public education in order for people to take back control of their health. Thus, Dr. Tracy decided to pursue her career as a naturopathic doctor, receiving her medical degree from the University of Bridgeport College of Naturopathic Medicine. Dr. Tracy continued her education to receive a Master's of Science in Acupuncture and Traditional Chinese Medicine from East West College of Natural Medicine. During her educational pursuits, Dr. Tracy has acquired valuable knowledge pertaining to the inner workings of health, human body, along with methods to promote long-term states of health and wellness. Her areas of focus include women's health, pain management, and chronic disease intervention. Now I will turn it over to Madison, who will be introducing Nilsa Rivera and as well as Kamari Artis.
Hi, everyone. Before I start, I would just like to say that these bios, these women that we have on our panel are amazing. What they have accomplished is amazing. So I will continue. I will be introducing Nilsa Rivera. She's a licensed clinical social worker, a licensed alcohol drug counselor, basic level 1 to 2 EDMR practitioner and Reiki master teacher, who through the use of cognitive behavioral therapy, psychodynamic therapy, somatic and trauma, reprocessing approaches, as well as their other modalities, aids others in their healing process. She specializes in guiding individuals transitioning and transforming from their hurtful human experiences to finding effective ways of balancing their life and pursuing wellness within their internal and external connections. She wholeheartedly believes in a strength-based approach, non-judgmental, respectful, while also providing a guilt and shame-free environment. And then we have Kamari Artis. She's a herbalist. She's an herbalist and holistic healer. She's also the founder and CEO of Only Queens LLC. She identified a need in the community to teach women the importance of self-education on topics of self-care, self-advocacy, and physical, mental, and spiritual wellness, which are the core values of Only Queens. She has supported and facilitated numerous events where she teaches women how to heal their bodies holistically with natural herbs and home remedies. And I'll pass it on to Melina to introduce Alicia.
Okay, and so I'll be introducing Ms. Alicia Hernandez-Strong. Ms. Alicia Hernandez-Strong grew up in New Britain, Connecticut, and went to the city's public schools. She has a bachelor's degree in government and religion from Wesleyan University and is completing a master's degree at Yale University. Oh my gosh, congratulations. She has years of experience in activism and community organizing throughout CT. After graduating from Wesleyan, she served as executive director of the Connecticut chapter of the Council of American Islamic Relations. She also helped run the New Britain office for Congresswoman Hayes' first campaign. After the murder of George Floyd, Strong helped co-found the New Britain Racial Justice Coalition to combat institutional racism. Her experiences as a young Afro-Puerto Rican growing up in New Britain has reinforced her commitment to racial and economic justice. She prides herself in bringing together diverse sets of people to fight for a common cause. She's currently running to be the first mayor of color in New Britain. And as a young Afro-Puerto Rican woman as well, all power to you, girl. And here is Corinne to introduce Soraya.
So first, let me say that like Soraya, I am always called Karen. So I just want to make sure, and I think I've even made the mistake of calling you Soraya. So I just want to make sure that I clarify that it is Soraya. So I'm going to introduce Soraya Iman. Soraya is a 16-year-old high school senior from Manchester, Connecticut. Over the years, she has become increasingly engaged in social justice and equity work. She is part of her school's youth equity squad and her district's equity team, both of which work to bring race, education, and equity to the Manchester public school system. She is also a member of Paper Voices Poetry, a social justice-based youth, which is a social justice-based youth poetry group. She frequently shares her poems and speeches at protests and other events as she works to amplify her own voice as well as the voices of marginalized groups in America. And what she didn't add in her bio is that most recently she won Power Up CT's contest, and where she's going to actually read the poem that she submitted, and she is going to read that now.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'm Soraya, as Corinne said, and I'm gonna be reading a poem titled Black Girl's Pain. It can be pretty heavy, so don't mind me if I get emotional. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and start. I'm drowning in a pool of my own oppression, grasping for air and trying to stay afloat as I sink deeper into the tears of my ancestors. Even the strongest flotation device can't pull me to the surface, can't pull me out of this modern day slavery and generational trauma. I'm falling off the edge of a building built on the backs of my people. As I descend past each story, I try to look through the windows, only to see flashes of red, pain, injustice, bondage. I'm burning, scorched by the flames fueled by your hatred, spread from the crosses you lit on our lawns, unrelenting as I try to stifle and douse them with floods of resistance. I'm bleeding, still trying to recover from 400-year-old wounds that only seem to get deeper. No bandage is big enough, thick enough, strong enough to hold me together. I'm falling apart as I speak, but you can't see it if you aren't like me. I'm choking on the ignorance you feed me in hopes I'll assimilate to your white society. My throat gets tighter with every all lives matter. You're being too sensitive. Why are you so angry? I'm not racist. I'm hurting. Physically, emotionally, mentally. Every part of me aches from your words, your systems, your teachings, your values. Each one finds a new string to pull in hopes of unthreading my entire being. I'm crying. The streams of tears running down my face are my only comfort. The oxytocin release calms me, but only for a minute, for my eyes become dry and I'll realize that my struggles are far from over. I'm dying, slowly but surely, waiting for the day my skin becomes my cause of death. Somewhere out there, there's a bullet with my name on it. All it takes is a trigger-happy officer to see me as a threat. I mean, I'm obviously pretty scary, right? I'm screaming, yelling in your face and asking for your help to dismantle these oppressive systems, to protect people who look like me, to stop killing Black people, to eradicate racism and promote equality, and you aren't hearing me. But I promise you, I'll keep screaming at the top of my lungs until you hear me, until my people are free and my life matters, until this country lives up to the words of the pledge you so badly want me to say every day in school. I will scream until I don't have to anymore. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Got it, snaps. If we could put some snaps in the chat. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for that. So, why are we doing this live stream? We are doing this live stream because the time is now, because we are under attack, because we don't have spaces enough like this to be able to talk without white folk around trying to take over or to get off on trauma porn. We are having this space so we can ask questions that we may be afraid to ask our mothers, our sisters, our grandmothers. We are here to empower ourselves so we can be able to have tough conversations with our mothers, our sisters, our daughters, our granddaughters, our nieces. We are here because it is Women's History Month. Her story, all of our stories matter. All of our lives, these beautiful Black and brown women matter. We're here because this is just another way for us to stop white domestic terrorism, for us to come to a space where we can learn, where we can laugh, where we can network, where we can cry, where we can grow, where we can be our most authentic selves. And so I want everybody to know that this is a safe space. You can drop any kind of questions you may have in the chat as things come along. You can drop a, go ahead, girl, or amen, or preach. You can drop an emoji. If you have to take a minute to just breathe or just be, and you have to step away because maybe a topic or a question gets too heavy, do what you need to do to take care of you. This, I believe, when I was working with the councilwoman in Madison, we really have started the conversation that this doesn't need to be the first and only, and that this is just going to be the first of many. And so I welcome all of you here, and I am so grateful that all of you are here. You are all loved, and you are all beautiful. You are all unique. You are all amazing. And I'm just super excited to have you all in this space. And thank you again to all of our panelists. And thank you so much for that amazing poem, Soraya. And now I'll turn it over to Councilwoman.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. That was a really amazing poem. So the topics that we're going to be discussing today, it is very much an intergenerational and intersectional conversation. And we have our awesome panelists who will be providing their expertise and their wisdom and their knowledge to help guide us through this conversation. And the categories are going to be discussing racism and its effect on our health, stressors and trauma's effect on our health as well, holistic modalities for us to heal our body, mind, and our spirit. We're also going to be talking about general body health, health, sexuality, and how do we broach the subject of LGBTQ plus issues when some of our elders really don't understand what that means. So that encompasses a lot, but we also want to leave enough time for your questions, your feedback, and for conversation in general. And with that spirit of starting off this conversation, I'll pass it on to Madison for the comfort agreement.
Hi, everyone. If you are familiar with a comfort agreement, it is simply just like 3 to 5 rules that we have for discussions, whether you're in a classroom or on Zoom, that we just want to abide by as we have this discussion, so that we respect everyone in the room. So the first one is use respectful language. That does not mean you can't curse. If that's the best way to express yourself, then do so. However, do not direct that onto anyone else or yourself negatively. Then there is one mic, which just means one person speaking at a time. And then there's disagree respectfully. If you do not agree with what somebody says, just keep it to yourself. Agree to disagree. And then there's speak without offending and listen without defending. Speak without offending is simple. It's the same thing as the first rule, to use respectful language or just to speak respectfully. Try your best not to offend anyone. That is not the place for this. And the same thing with listen without defending. When we are giving each other advice or suggestions, do not take it as someone attacking you. That's a trauma response, in all honesty. So we want to keep this as civil as possible. And then the last one is no criticism of self or others, similar to the rest of the rules. We do not want any negative energy in this room. So just keep the negative criticism to yourselves. And then I'll pass it back to Liz for housekeeping.
Thank you. So just general housekeeping. There are going to be a lot of things that we probably have questions or want to add comments in. And so that you don't lose that your train of thought, you can certainly put it in the chat as it comes up. And so that way we can get back to it later. And then also, if for whatever reason you're unmuted and there's background noise, just make sure to mute yourselves. There are going to be moments in this conversation that some topics really hit close to home, and perhaps you want to share your personal story that is a very personal story and you're sharing it in this space. We are recording this, But in the event that you want us to stop recording, we can stop the recording so that you can share your personal story in that way. Just let us know in advance and we'll make sure to say, hey, can you stop recording? We'll stop the recording. And then when you're done, we can then continue with the record. Just putting it out there. And you can view everybody in 2 different versions. You can go to the top right-hand corner and see the speaker view. So that way you can see who the speakers are, or you can go to the gallery version, gallery view, where you can see everybody. And now to start off our questions, passing it to Corinne.
Thank you. So the first question actually will go to all of our panelists, so you can take turns answering. And because we do have a lot to get through, we definitely want to make sure that we save room and space for questions and comments. We're just asking that we try to keep all of the responses to about 2 to 3 minutes each. So the first question is, what does being Black mean to you? What does being brown or Latina mean to you? What does your ethnicity mean to you? And then if you could just kind of share from your perspective the effects, and this is kind of like loaded, but the effects that colorism has had on you and your community. Colorism, for those that don't know, really has started from the early days of slavery, where they separated, at least for in the Black community, lighter skinned Black people, lighter skinned brown people had a different experience than darker skinned Black and brown people. And, you know, in our household, my mother's much darker than I am. My father is Panamanian, and so he's lighter than my mother. And so I have his skin tone, and my sister has my mom's skin tone. And growing up, people would say things to my sister like, oh, you're pretty for a dark-skinned girl. And people would favor me a lot more than my sister. And so for years, and even still now, there was a wedge that was driven between my blood sister and I because of colorism. And I think this question is important because a lot of times you will see that the Black and brown community actually has been pitted against each other because of white supremacy, and because of the lighter skinned and brown people versus the darker skinned Black people. So I guess we can go with Dr. Tracy first, and then you can pass it on to someone else.
Can you all hear me? Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, so like when I first saw this question, I was like, I thought about this question a lot. But when I think of like my Blackness and my Black experience, my parents came to America from Jamaica. So, and then they brought us to Connecticut, and I was raised in like Cheshire, Connecticut, which is a very small, like predominantly white community. So for me, with my family and other people that I know, extended family, friends, being Black was just being me, getting to enjoy the culture that I grew up in. I also did some genetic testing. I found out I'm from Nigeria, from Liberia. I have ancestors from the Congo, Ghana. So I think there's like a very rich history there. But on the other side, like I was saying, growing up in a predominantly white community and then going through my education and being, again, having basically a spotlight on me as being like the only Black person in many of the spaces I was in, that's where I think there's another side to, my Blackness, where I sometimes didn't feel safe being Black or didn't feel comfortable being me. So that's kind of how I viewed this question when you asked it. Just my experience personally being Black, that's kind of how I view it from the two different sides.
Are we open to just jump in? Okay, so I would say that my
overall experience at first, it was very, once I came into understanding the effects that racism had on our community and things like that, I was very angry. My experience was very angry and just confused. And now my experience has been me remembering who we are, remembering how powerful we are, remembering how beautiful we are, like as a culture, as a people, and just how large and connected our diaspora is. So it has become a journey back to self for me, a journey back to our ancestors for me, a journey of understanding my bloodline and how vibrant and beautiful our bloodline really is. And that has shifted entirely my whole perspective of the Black experience. And although, you know, living here and under these social constructs and things in the matrix, so to speak, living in this paradigm, seeing all these things, you know, it can make you feel as though, you know, your experience is supposed to be one way. But once you start to understand that you are the manifester of your overall experience, you start to cultivate an entirely different energy around who you are as a Black, African, Latina, brown, however you identify. You start to, you know, recreate your own image and recreate that narrative for yourself. So for me, the Black experience has been all about, so right now has been about remembering who we are as a people.
So I'm gonna jump in because, you know, Kamari, you talked about ancestry. And for me growing up, I was the light one in the family. So I was very light-skinned, and as you could tell, and it hasn't changed. And everyone else was brown, and I was pushed to kind of be the voice and the person in front of everyone. Like, here you go, you make the appointments, you know, they relate more to you. And the reality is they did not relate more to me. I was more of an alien because I was fair-skinned, but I had a thick accent. And then I have my parents that I had to do all these things for. When it comes to my Latina heritage and who I am, I grew up knowing that it was very rich, very cultural, from, you know, natural remedies to understanding who I was very young. But I felt that in the society I grew up in the neighborhood, it was taken away fairly easy. Going to school and the teachings and the way they rip certain things away from who I knew I was, with my family, with my tribe. So I will go to school, pretend I was this other person because I had to, you know, because that's another thing, authority. You have to bow down to authority and then go home and go back to talking in Spanish, being with mama and papa and my sisters, and just blend. So it was very confusing growing up and actually speaking my voice when I was in my probably 1820s. I kind of realized that the power was within me, that I can manifest, that I can pull through, that I had already the gifts and knowledge from my ancestors to actually, maneuver, to flow. I didn't need someone to understand me or to like me or to like my voice. I just needed to speak. I needed just to go to school, get my education, do whatever I needed to do to get that paper. Because one thing I remember, one of my professors said, no one could take this away from you, Nilsa. No one could take your education. So I still love to learn, and I'm always learning. And with that, I mean, when I think about my culture, I think about the women in my life of color that have really directly, indirectly impacted my life, you know, and I could say strength, love, you know, unity, empowerment, resiliency, but I also know the other side, which is I'm not beautiful to other people. So, and that's okay with me today. So that's me.
We can hear from Akila.
Sure. Hello. I just hear so much that resonates with me and what Dr. Tracy and Nilsa said. I remember growing up as a kid, having parents that are immigrants from Jamaica, and, you know, being the oldest of 8 children and going into school And that's where I first learned that I was a little different than folks. I grew up in Hartford and went to a West Hartford school at a young age, and would come home crying because of the remarks that were said to me from, kids that were more fair skinned or white, names that I won't, repeat. And it's just very disheartening that, when my daughter, who is now 18, same thing happening to her, going to Manchester public schools, coming home saying, hearing those same remarks, and I just couldn't believe it. I just knew I had to do something. I knew I needed to change and just start educating myself. Being Black to me, in my family, I'm the darkest person in my family. So I got it in the house, hearing names at home from my siblings, going to school, and it just was all around the place. So to me, being Black is powerful, but yet also disheartening. It's like a polarity. So for me, I feel healthy as a Black woman, but yet I feel like I'm disease ridden. And, sometimes I feel really safe and connected to my community, but then there's moments where I'm really unsafe. So I know that I'm having this experience as a human being, but I'm also, a spiritual being. So to me, I don't really care about the color. I know it's this big issue in our world right now, but I just know my soul is deeper than the color of my skin. And I'm just going to keep it short. I know we have a lot more other questions, and thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're gonna turn it over to our second question for Dr. Tracy, for Nilsa, Kamari, and Akila. What holistic modalities do you practice, and how does it work?
I am both a naturopathic physician as well as an acupuncturist. And naturopathic medicine is a very unique form of medicine in that we look at the body both from like a conventional medicine point of view, but then we apply things or modalities such as herbs or supplements or nutrition to help the body in its own natural way of healing. On the other side, I do acupuncture, and then acupuncture comes from ancient history. It's almost like 2,000 years old, coming from China. Basically, it's a very intuitive kind of medicine. As an acupuncturist, if you've ever been, you might have had your pulse felt, you might have had your tongue looked at. Essentially, how we look at the body is through channels. The body functions through these energy fields, right? And if there's a block in any of the energy fields, that's what it is then manifested as disease in the body. Acupuncture is mostly known for helping with pain and things like that, but it works very well for issues like anxiety, stress, the ways that our bodies manifest what's going on in our environment. So it's different, but it's beautiful, and it comes from a beautiful traditional culture, and I love it.
Nilsa?
Yes. Dr. Tracy, I definitely need your information because I love acupuncture and I've been looking for an acupuncturist. So please, information. So I actually practice EMDR. So EMDR is a modality that it uses eye movement by using bilateral stimulation to process trauma in the body. It's different from other therapies. It's not like it uses cognitive as well, emotions, and then energy stuck in your body. So it's very different. Is for trauma. It could be a traumatic event, depression, anxiety, many different stressors. It doesn't have to be PTSD. A lot of people just assume that is not true. So I also am a Reiki master, but I know that Kamari, you're going to speak on that. So, and Dr. Tracy, you talked about energy fields. So I do practice Reiki as well. And I integrative care. So I use traditional and Reiki as well. So, and part of it, which I'm going to discuss, is at Safe Passages, which I am co-founder of it. We practice integrative care. So all of us do traditional therapy, and then also Reiki. So I'm big, I really believe in that. And if you ever have heard the book, The Body Keeps the Score, is a very well-written book on trauma and the way the body keeps the charge of the energy. And it has different modalities that actually work for trauma. It was by Bessel van den Hark. So that's one of the modalities that I use, but there's more. The EFT, which is tapping through the body, again, energy. So I could go on and on, but it's short. But if you're interested, I mean, it's all with energy. And I'm a really big believer on energy in the body and the effects it does on not only mental health, spiritual, and also physical health.
Thank you so much. And panelists, as you're speaking, if you can please put your website on the chat so that our attendees have access to that. And if at any moment when you're speaking about anything, if you want our IT support to pull up a specific website, just let us know. Now we're going to be hearing from Kamari on that same question. What holistic modality do you practice? How does it work? Followed by Akila.
There are many, and there are so many to choose from. So for me personally, I do practice Reiki on myself as well as others. And I know Nilsa just spoke about that as well. And the following question is we'll get deeper into that when we talk about the chakras. But for just like being at home, like simple, holistic home modalities that you can do, herbal baths, drinking your herbal teas, exercising, taking care of yourself, meditating. Those are like simple ways to tap in energetically, holistically to your own energies, to your own self, and you start to heal yourself. So those are the ones that I particularly practice. Herbs, they have so many benefits to the body. I'm sure Akila, I hope I said that right, can speak on this a lot more in detail because I'm still a baby in this thing and I'm not ashamed to say that. But yes, they have so many different benefits to the body. I drink certain herbs specific to my female reproductive system. I drink herbs specific to healing my digestive system. There are so many different ways to go about healing yourself holistically. And as far as my healing baths, salt is important with cleansing for me. I take a lot of salt baths to cleanse my energy, things like that. Those are the types of holistic modalities that I use.
Thank you, Kamari. I wasn't even going to mention that, but herbs are one of my major things that I use for healing. And my daughter as well has, picked up this beautiful tool. She makes so many different remedies. We give it out in our family. I didn't even think of it because just with my parents coming from Jamaica, it's one of the major, natural herbs from the earth. And my mom was known as like the plant woman in our town because she has like such a beautiful green thumb. She can grow anything. So I didn't even think of mentioning that. Thank you, Kamari, for reminding me. But generally, I teach yoga. Specifically, I teach trauma-informed yoga. It's just creating that really safe space and treating everyone in the space as if they have been through something. And I think that's a really good way to look at life, that you can't just walk into the room and then expect folks to really just, be instructed in a certain way. It's having that love and compassion when you're doing the practice. And I also practice meditation. That's a biggie. Really a practice of mindfulness, being aware of your environment, connecting to your higher self and to something larger than you. I do a lot of crystal healing, and that's phenomenal, learning about different properties of crystals and their attributes and how they can actually, bring healing to the physical body, to the spirit, to the soul. And also a big thing for me is my shamanic practices. So those practices are something very sacred to me. I know we have a very short amount of time, but I also want to talk about Reiki as well. That's another big one. So anything that has to do with energy, I believe that we're in this world and everything is living energy. It could be a plant, a human being, a dog, a chair. So it can be a living thing that we perceive as living, or something inanimate, which still, to me, has a soul and a spirit. So those are some of the practices of many. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And for the next question, Madison will be asking one of our panelists.
So this question is directly for Kamari. As you guys talked about a lot about different holistic modalities, I know Kamari mentioned chakras. So the question is, what are chakras? So you can just explain that for the audience here.
So I'm going to read a little something I wrote, because that's chakras can be so much and they can be overwhelming. So I tried to narrow it down and make it as simple as possible. So we all understand that we have our physical body and its functions, but we also have come to understand that we're far more than just our physical body, and that everything is energy, from our atoms to the solar system. So this energy has many names across different cultures. Chi, ki, prana, but I'm just going to refer to it as life force energy. So this life force energy, it extends far beyond our physical body, and it can be seen as our aura. So you know how you walk in a room, you check the energy, you check in the vibes, it's that kind of thing. So your chakras are the main energy centers of your body. And there are over 100 chakras in your body, but most people only talk about the main 7, which is your root. Starting at the bottom of your spine, you have your root. Then over your reproductive area, you have your sacral. Then over your stomach area, you have your solar, your heart, throat, third eye, and crown. And so the lower 3 of the 7 chakras deal mostly like with your physical self. This is how I remember it. I'm sure everyone has their own interpretation. But the lower 3 pretty much deal with your physical, and the top 3 pretty much deal with your spiritual self, and your heart is what connects everything and makes it all flow, right? And so the goal that we all want to achieve is balanced and healthy chakras. So for example, if your root is balanced, you typically feel connected to nature, the natural flow of your life, and pretty grounded. Whereas where they're not balanced, you may feel a lack of security in your basic needs being met, and you function probably a lot out of fear and your insecurities and things like that. And there are many ways to balance your chakras and cleanse your energy. And that's why a lot of people seek out healers or light workers or Reiki practitioners and naturopathic doctors and things like that to help you work through your heavy blockages that you may be having in your chakras. Anyone want to build off of that? Or do you guys think I covered it?
No, that was great. That was very helpful to understand. We also have the next question being asked by Melina. Specifically, this question is for Akila and Kamari.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you as well. That information is very enlightening, especially to people who are just beginning to get into this kind of stuff, because we all see it on social media and out in pop culture. And so very great information. Thank you. And this question is directed for Akila and Kamari. Again, a couple minutes each to explain what moment made the light bulb go on in your head about seeking holistic modalities.
I guess I'll go since you just spoke, Kamari. So let's see. I went to a yoga studio one day and I was doing yoga. And next thing you know, I was doing the warrior pose, or also known as chair, I should say. And I started to see this sun, and there was a yoga instructor that I knew was there. I had this total vision, and I felt like I actually was in hell. I just felt a lot of heat. I didn't understand what was going on in my body. So then we went into another pose or shape that is called like corpse pose. So you're just laying there, like that final shape of yoga. And I started getting all these flashbacks, moments in my life that I did not remember, moments of trauma. And I was just literally crying, thinking I was coming to yoga to get a workout. I didn't know that yoga was a spiritual practice. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and I was filled with fear. After that yoga session, I never went back, and I knew there was something powerful in that moment. So what I did was I just called the yoga studio and found out when they were having their next yoga teacher training, which was in like a month or so. I signed up, and that was the moment that, you know, the light bulb just like exploded, and I knew I need to follow this path. I was able to hear, you know, from my spirit guides that this is where you're going. So that was my moment that I made a clear decision to just keep following this path, and I've never stopped since.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And then we'll hear from Kamari on the same question.
I would say that my son was probably like my biggest catalyst in my holistic and spiritual journey, but it was also when I pretty much realized how, and please forgive me if this offends anyone, but just how our healthcare system was and still is very flawed and quite corrupt. And Western medicine is just not as interested in preventative measures. So it's either you figure out how to stay healthy or take drugs forever so that they can make as much money off of your body as possible. Sorry if that offends anyone, but I am very passionate about this. I think it's just so wrong. Okay, so I had to make the conscious decision to choose how to heal my body, with a lot of reading and educating myself, because these are not mainstream topics. The mainstream topics are how can you change what already exists? You know what I'm saying? Not how can you enhance who you already are. So I was working towards healing myself, and I read books like Heal Thyself by Queen Afua. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with her works. I read books like Eat Right for Your Blood Type and Forks Over Knives. And I watched a lot of health documentaries, which I know a lot of people are like scared of because of all the, you know, crazy stuff that they put in there. But it's a lot of information in there that's worth going and doing your own research about, you know. Take what you take from things, and definitely ask a lot of questions and research as much as you possibly can on your own. So that's my advice when you're looking into all this stuff. So I did a lot of health documentaries that educated me on like what's really in our food and how unethical the business of, you know, our food business is. And once I changed my eating habits, my mind and my body and my spirit pretty much followed like right after that. So that was the light bulb for me. Like the food was the light bulb for me, because I realized that a lot of it is killing us. And then it made me look at my child, and I was also working in a hospital with a lot of oncology, which is cancer, a lot of those patients. And it was very difficult for me. And I'm surprised that I tell this story all the time. Like, I'm surprised that I didn't get fired, because I worked in a, it was called the Family Resource Center. So it was where the families were able to come and like play games. And we did a lot of programming for the kids to make sure they didn't feel like they were in a hospital. And I would talk to the parents a lot about holistic modalities, and they would thank me, and they were very grateful for the information that I provided, because oftentimes they were given like this one solution, and they felt very powerless, and those are your kids. And, you know, so that was the light bulb for me, like seeing those kids and wishing that I could do more. It made me research more and try to help as much as I could.
Thank you so much, both of you, for your powerful stories. Our next question, and for sharing in this way, in this space. Our next question is from Karen.
Thank you all. I am really interested in, or not interested, I guess, excited to have this next question asked. This one is to Dr. Tracy. This question is important to me because for those who don't know, I'm the woman, Melina and I were the women at the Capitol January 6th. When the woman attacked both of us and then she turned and spit in my face. And as a result, they just recently introduced, thank God to the councilwoman's amazing husband, who was my attorney in this, helped me get the charges upgraded from breach of peace to a hate crime. And not long after she spat in my face, the trauma of that, I ended up getting diagnosed with shingles. And as a result, the shingles showed up in my scalp. And so now I have some bald spots because that's a nerve thing. And so I lost the nerves in the areas where the shingles were. And so I lost the hair and high blood pressure and so on. And so the question, Dr. Tracy, is how do stressors and trauma show up in the body?
Sure. So definitely, I think like if you ever look this up, like 90% of office visits to doctors are due to health issues caused by stress, which is astronomical. So stress is definitely a root cause of many, many diseases. And I could kind of like, I could go head to toe. So Corinne, you mentioned having shingles as a result of stress. So being sick often, whether it's for us as women, chronic vaginal bacterial infections, whether it's like yeast infections or BV infections, I see that a lot. Digestive issues, the microbes in our gut are very important. Maybe you guys have heard of that before, but just 2 hours of stress shows up in the body as a decrease in our, what we call the microbiome. And so a lot of this manifests as like gas and bloating, abdominal pain. For a lot of women who have constipation or reflux. It could also show up as irregular menstrual cycles for us as women. So it starts to affect our hormones. It could start to affect how our hair is growing. So hair loss is a big aspect when it comes to stress and trauma showing up in our body. I had a teacher who would always say, we hold our issues in our tissues. So our muscle tissues, just take a body scan and think about, how much stress and tightness you're holding in your shoulders, causing headaches and sleep issues. So there's so many ways and in so many different parts of the body that stress could attack. And there's no part of the body that stress can't or trauma manifest as. So it's actually a pretty deep question, but it's both on the chemical level and on the physical level, and even on the genetic level that we are affected by stress and trauma. So we're talking about our ancestors, what they experienced, affecting our genes and them passing it down to us and us manifesting it as diseases and so on and so forth. So that question, like I said, is very, very deep and shows up in so many different ways.
Thank you for that response, Doctor. Our next question is from Melina.
Yes, and this question is for Nilsa. This is for basically talking about, more on trauma and stress. And so generally, in our society, there's a lot of shame with women and trauma. There's cultural beliefs that fly around that say, you have to work until you die, or you have to be there for your partner first before putting your own needs, or always be there for others before yourself, and your needs need to be last. And so with that being said, how do we work through that shame and work through that type of pressure?
So growing up with strong Latina and other minority women, I saw that, they work, didn't take care of themselves. I just saw how it destroyed not only their physical well-being, but sometimes either their mental health. But I'm going to define a little bit of shame, because the word is use shame, but shame is when you internalize what happened to you, which I am bad. So you took it in. It's focused on self. Embarrassment is rooted with shame, but you're not taking it in yourself. You're not taking it as a personal attack or internalizing what occurred. Guilt, I did something and you're focused on the behavior that happened. So shame is really destructive to us because we internalize that. We blame us. So we become part of the problem. So I just want to clear that out. When we talk about trauma, there's three different types of trauma. So you have acute trauma, chronic trauma, and complex trauma. Acute, singular, it happens. Chronic is multiple. And complex, it happens like trauma is prolonged and it's complex, and you see it more in interpersonal relationships. So I just want to clear that up. I know I have time. And also when you look at trauma, when you look at any trauma, think about an emotional response to a deeply distressing event. So that could be a loss of someone. It could be a sexual assault. It could be a natural disaster. I hear this a lot when I work with individuals, which is, it didn't happen to me, but you witness it. So you can have a traumatic response to witnessing something. So it doesn't have to happen to you. And that's this myth about, well, I went to war, but I saw it, but it didn't happen to me. You still have a response to it. Also, people could be in the same place, same event, and not have trauma or have any stressful outcome from it. So I just want to clarify that one as well. And in talking about trauma, I just want to be careful and just saying, when we talk about these things, please regulate yourself if something does trigger you. This question really was so complex and multi-layered, because when I look about trauma and we were talking about root chakras, the root chakras for safety. So even growing up in a dynamic where you didn't feel safe, when you weren't secure, that could, the flow in that chakra is affected. And you may respond to things, actually react to things in a very traumatic and response way. So when I think about exploring that, gently exploring that, I view this as a self. So think about Maslow's basic needs. So what is your belief system? So looking first, where your family? So that's the first brick. Then your family systems, how did that affect you? And then safety and security, did you have it? And what was the narrative? And is that narrative still within you? So how do you work through these false illusions and beliefs set on us? Working too hard as a woman, or not working enough, not being strong enough to hold two jobs, take care of the children, and still have sex with your husband or your partner. So I think just looking at things differently and taking time to understand yourself and how does trauma and these narratives do affect your connection with your family, your tribe, your friends. So I look at it that way. If you say how, what can we do? I look at simply placing boundaries. What are boundaries? Something that we lack of because we overdo sometimes and we don't know how to say no. So a simple no. No, I cannot. And I always ask, stand back. Are you reacting with your emotion, or are you taking in the information? Do you have to help, or do you want to help? Look at the facts. What's really happening? We're taught to people please. Not all of us. Some of us. I know I was. So we jump in to help everyone. So, and I'm a big believer to listen to your gut. And that's another thing that was taken away from us as women. Not to listen to our intuition. So even simple practices like that, like take a minute to what's really going on. How is it affecting you mentally, spiritually? If you could go there. And if you cannot, just pausing, and how is this affecting your life?
Thank you so much. This has been really deep. I mean, I know we still have more questions, and we certainly want to hear from our attendees who are here, but this is, as you see me, I'm taking notes. I'm like, there's a lot of really awesome and useful information here. Going a bit deeper into that question, I'm going to ask a follow-up question specifically to Akila and to Nilsa. And it's a 3-part question. And it comes from, it comes as women of color, as Black and brown women, as Latina women, as women with our ethnicity and our culture, the way that we present ourselves, the way that people respond to us, is very much guided by society, right? Like in terms of how our society is set up and everything else, and stuff that we already talked about in the beginning. But so the 3-part question is, how do we break the chains of intergenerational trauma? How do we come into peace with our sexual health? And how do we tap into our ancestral practices without the stigma of being labeled either a witch or practicing voodoo or bruja or having a negative connotation? So those are 3 questions that could be wrapped up probably into one in an easier way, as we navigate these spaces as women. And as you're thinking about the answer, I'll share my own very quickly personal experience where I've had many moments where I'll step in and I know that it's definitely a situation of racism, where my immediate response, my body's response, is to shut down and like freeze when I'm feeling attacked, and or like my cognitive abilities are impaired where I feel like I can't even speak. Like I can't speak something so simple, right? But those are the 3 questions and would love to hear from you on that.
Sorry for all the noise. I didn't know I was unmuted. So I guess I wanted to start with how do we break the change of the intergenerational trauma? For me, I definitely, like Dr. Tracy here, highly into epigenetics and what, and just learning about the history of my genes and how they express themselves and how I can change that. I can do stuff right now in the present moment that can kind of go back in time and, you know, rewind or rewire my body. So it's all, it started with me going to a naturopath, Dr. Giordamo. We are kind of talked about him a little bit. We talked about his book, Eat Right for Your Blood Type. That book literally changed my life. I found out, you know, certain things about myself, and I never knew growing up that, you know, my ancestry, my family's history, ancestral curses, if you want to call it that, you know, can be passed on, you know, by my genes. And just continually doing research, doing 23andMe. I think my power is really low. 23andMe, Ancestry, just always educating myself, and so that I can allow my daughter to see like this woman working so hard and knowing that there's power in education and information. So basically for me, like to break those chains, it actually takes work. You know, this is a really deep conversation or deep question. I know it has 3 parts, but you got to do the work. And I just always knowing that I'm a student first. I'm a student every single day in my life. Not thinking that I know everything, but I know that if I ever need help, I can call out for help from my spiritual team, from, you know, human people that are alive and living. They can be plants, animals. Just knowing that there's always information out there. I'm just going to follow into the next question, finding peace with my sexual health. For me, I grew up and I had a lot of sexual trauma growing up as a child. That was a really hard one for me. It took many, many, many years. I thought I had, you know, I guess, you know, maybe I thought I was healed from it just because when I was young, I was able to, you know, understand what had happened to me, but it always left me in a place of not feeling really safe. So just from that experience, I never felt safe. So safety is like my big thing. Me going to shamanic practitioners and Reiki practitioners is really helpful. Just continually also doing the work in that area as well for my sexual health. And it's a lot. It's just growing up and having different ideas about relationships with men or women, you know, I had to come to terms and just come out and let my family know, like, I just love everyone, you know, like, don't judge me. Yeah, I want to tap into our ancestor practices. I guess I don't really care.
I think we may have momentarily, with technical issues, lost Akila, but we will turn over the 3 questions to Nilsa as well. How do
So
we
I,
break chains of trauma? How do we come into peace with our sexual health? And how do we tap into our ancestral practices without having negative stigma?
I'm so sorry.
Okay, great. Akila's back. Akila,
My phone died. I have another phone. I'm so sorry. So I wanted to go into the second part of the question, or the third part. Can you read that for me? Because I was
third
using
part,
this one.
how do we tap into our ancestral practices without the negative stigma of being called like a witch or doing voodoo or having a negative connotation to it?
So with me, it's all about building that relationship. So the more and more that we do these practices, the stronger, more empowered that we feel. And I guess in the end, like, I really don't care. I'm judged, I'm called names constantly. I don't think there is anything that we can do, but collectively, if we, you know, start to come out of the closet more, speak out loud, you know, about who we are, what we do, I think people will come to more of an understanding, instead of seeing people who are different as, you know, a witch or scary or, you know, indifferent. But I think that at this point today, like, I still will be called those names, and I still continue to do my practices, and I will still continue to learn about myself. So I'm just continuing to learn about who I am coming into this beautiful experience of being a human as well as a spiritual being, and not really worrying about the name calling, and just continuing to build relationships with folks in the community.
So much for that. Powerful
Thank you.
wisdom. Now we're turning the same questions over to Nilsa.
hi, I'm going to start with, I guess, the last one, because everything Akila said, I kind of, it's the same way, from ancestry to kind of moving and just doing my practice without taking what others think of me into my heart. She is correct when she said we cannot stop anyone for calling us names, whether bruja, santeria, anything that they have, which doesn't matter. People will have names for us, whether we like it or not. What people think of me is none of my business. What it is my business is keeping my practice alive and making sure that I share, and even this platform today, not to run away, not to be shy, not to be embarrassed, but to show up and talk about these practices because they're meaningful, and they're meaningful to us. So I want to share that with ancestries. I believe we always have connection with our ancestries, but with practice and work and knowing how to connect with them. All of us, we have our own innate tribe in us. So it's actually figuring out what parts of you, sometimes it's funny because in my household, there was a lot of practice, but a lot of hush hush, like they will do the prayers and they had candles, but no one will talk about what it meant, or the connection with grandparents or great grandparents and the belief systems. And even now they're a little shy about it, but I'm open, so it's okay with me. When it comes to generational traumas, it's very difficult because sometimes the people in our families, they have the answers of generational trauma and what wounds are we carrying, whether genetic, our bloodline, our energy. They don't share that with us out of shame, embarrassment, guilt, their own trauma to connect with us in that level, their own shame cast on people to shame them. So it's very hard. So I try to look at the behaviors, look how they love, look how they fought, look how they stood together. And with that, in my own self, try to find out, what am I carrying? What shame am I carrying? What shame for my accent, what shame for my skin, what shame for my belief systems, for my spirituality. So, the first thing is like learning and kind of identifying what are you carrying genetically, and also spiritually and energetically, because you feel it, you feel the charge. Something happens, you say, my throat locks, I freeze. And sometimes I wonder, growing up, I remember my mom being embarrassed to speak. And like I said, pushing me, and I will speak. And then because I couldn't say the words correctly, the person will shame me. But she didn't understand. I understood. I remember being called a cockroach, and she didn't know that. And I'm young looking at this person, 10 years old, and they're using these words that my mom couldn't protect me. So I had to protect her. So that's reverse, because now I became the parent. Now I became the fighter. And that was traumatic in a way. And yes, I learned in an early age, she's with me, she'll fight for me, but there was barriers, language, how to get places, whether medical, whether mental, whether physical. I mean, it doesn't matter. There's just a barrier in the systems that are created to help us. So, I look at that, and I also, one of the things for healing is understanding yourself and accepting your own experiences without shame. None of us have the same experience, and collectively we have suffered. And I don't want to offend anyone, but it's just understanding you. And yes, call me a bruja, call me a healer, call me anything. I'm still who I am. So really standing in your truth and empowering your name. I'm Nelsa. That's my name, and people mispronounce it, and I'm okay. And I correct them, and I keep walking. So it's just knowing those generational traumas, going back to that and breaking them. It's definitely not easy, and Akia and anyone here could relate to, it's not easy. There's we call them shadow moments, and dark nights of the soul, where you're going through deep trauma and you're identifying and processing, and you realize that sometimes things need to break in order to be rebuilt, and that's okay. I know one part of my life when I was younger, I was so afraid for things to break apart. And now I realized that things need to be disconstructed to build back again. So that's my thing with generational trauma, is understanding it.
I just thank you for that, both of you. As we're sitting here and processing all of this, and it's something that all of you as panelists have touched upon, which is that trauma can be passed down genetically. So trauma can be passed down genetically. And it's almost like, to hear all of you say this, it's almost like a moment of enlightenment, because we know that you know the feelings that you have inside you, the feelings that you carry, and sometimes it's really hard to put it into words, but only you know what that is. And from what all of you are saying, you have the power to break those intergenerational trauma chains. So I just wanted to mention that, because all of you have touched upon that, so that as we're processing all this, it sinks in that we do have that power, which is a beautiful thing that all of you have imparted in us, in terms of, listen, you have that power to break those chains. So thank you. Melina will be asking the next question, which is building off of that 3-part question.
Yes, the study of epigenetics and hearing these lovely professionals speaking about it is very, very interesting, especially when you're speaking on the history and the culture of Black and Brown women. And so speaking to that, as Black and Brown and Latina and ethnic women, we are always told, we're so strong, we're so, we're this, we're that. And it's held to like a standard culturally in society that women of color, strong women. And so they can handle all of this, all of this racism, all of this oppression that we're putting on them, apparently. So that is, leading into the question, what does it mean to be strong at all times? strong at all times? And what does that do to the body? And then the follow-up question is then, how do we balance our feminine and masculine energy? And that, you know, ties into a lot of different things with the energy that we've been speaking about. And so that goes to Kamari first, and then Nilsa.
I think a great segue into this question is, we speak a lot about our generational curses and things like that, but we also need to understand we have generational gifts, and our ancestors did not just leave us here broken. They left us here with a lot more than that. But because of our environment, oftentimes what manifests mostly is our trauma and things like that. But I think a lot of us now, and I feel like we can feel the shift is happening as we are in the age of Aquarius, for those who are into astrology. Things are shifting and we are becoming more enlightened as a people, and understanding our gifts. All of these spirituality and talks of healing and things like that, our ancestors have been doing this, and that is also embedded within us, and we're tapping into on an individual level as well, you know? So, and I think within that, we have to understand that, you know, we do have these gifts, but we do have, you know, this trauma. And oftentimes we forget that as much as we are strong because we are dealing with so much trauma, we're also strong enough to be vulnerable. We're also strong enough to be softer. You know, we're also strong enough to not have to wear these, put up these walls all the time, but we're also strong enough to understand that we have the power to break them down too. You know, we are constantly going between our warring self and our infinite self, and our warring self really wants us to, you know, combat a lot of our trauma with, you know, not, it wants us to be like a little more aggressive, make us feel like we have to be this strong person, but our infinite self tells us that we can have all of this, you know, we can be strong, we can be vulnerable, we can be happy, we can be sad, all these dualities that we carry, we can do both when we are operating within our infinite self. So, but when we are imbalanced and we feel as though we have to operate as being strong all the time, it definitely shows up in our body, as Dr. Tracy spoke about before. And we have to learn how to balance those energies, the energies of our feminine and our masculine. And how do we do that? First, we have to understand that we are beings that carry both sides. We carry both sides. We have the ability to tap into both sides. And I understand that the way that society has set things up with women going from, you know, more domesticated roles to being out on the front lines as we are, and having these more masculine roles, doctors, as they would say, you know, but it has caused us to operate in our masculine a lot more, but we have to understand that we can turn it off, you know, and we can come back to a softer self. We can come back to a vulnerable self, and embrace that side of ourselves, knowing when to use it and knowing when to not use it is very, very important. And that's going to come with you doing what you need to do to learn yourself and know yourself and exactly how those energies show up in your life. So for example, I'm going to tell a personal story with my son. Woo child, my son is a very emotional little boy. He's a Cancer. He's emotional mama's little boy. And if you're into astrology, my moon is in Aries. So I'm like a man. I am like, my demeanor is very masculine. So I felt, and because of the way that my co-parenting situation is set up, I felt the need to be very masculine with him. And it did not work. It did not work. His first, like, my son he'll be 7 this year. So like my first, until really like last year when I started my therapy over at Safe Passages with my girls, it was very hard for me as a mom because I was operating in this masculine energy, and all this little boy needed was a nurturing, safe environment for him to flourish. And I'm like, you got to do this, you got to do that, and the discipline and da 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 da, because I felt like I needed to take on so much that I felt like he was missing on his paternal end. And I had to realize that that's not my stuff to carry. I just need to realize how I can be a softer mother and nurture this little boy in this world, not necessarily compensate for what I feel like other people within his life are lacking. You know what I mean? So I had to learn how to balance my masculine and my feminine as a mother. And what allowed me to do that was removing myself completely from my own mother, and from some of my own family members, and just really being in isolation with my child so I could learn how to be a parent on my own, because I hadn't had a chance to do that growing up in a house with all these different opinions. And then I'm the black sheep weirdo because I got crystals and I'm burning sage. So everybody's all confused about why I'm taking spiritual baths with my kid and all this stuff. And I'm like, listen, y'all had it one way, but these ancestors are talking to me about this way. So we gonna try it this way. I came out fine, Ma. Thank you. I appreciate it. But we got more growing to do, you know? So that was my story with like trying to balance my masculine and my feminine. And now I am coming into it, and my son, and I've seen my healing be transferred over to my kid. As he feels me more energetically stable, he is now more energetically stable as well, as I'm learning to clean my home and the energies in here. And I'll keep it short, but yes, that's my story.
So I'm just going to elaborate a little bit on, thank you, Kamari. So, you know, when I think about balancing strong and the word strong and seeing my own family dynamic, I noticed that when my father didn't show up, my mom's energy was more masculine. So what I realized, and this is my own saying, when males in our life are not there to help or show up for us, whether directly or indirectly, even at work, we tend to take on a more masculine energy to balance ourselves out, or even to meet them halfway. I'm good enough or better than you. And we don't know how to go back and and I call it the lion and the lamb. If you know tarot, there's a strength card and it has a lion and a lamb. And I always say, choose and know when you're going to be the lion and when you're going to be the lamb, and when you go actually control the lion. So I for me, when I look at strong and this meaning of being strong, for me, in an unbalanced way, it means being detached, no emotional, no feelings, no output of emotion. It means neglecting myself in order to please everyone else. It means shutting up, because if I say that something hurts and I'm whining, and I just got to tough it up and keep moving, because I am the root of the family. So those could be generational traumas on their own way. Not everyone, but that could be. So when we talk, these questions are so complex to me, because you could do a presentation on one. So when I look at what we need to do, what it represents to be strong. Well, if I take care of myself, am I a good woman? Am I a good sister? Am I a good daughter? Or does that take away the healthy parts of me? I have to shut them out. Also, Kamari did talk about the female energy in our body. Our left side is female. We receive through our left side, and through the right side, we give. And that's our male dominant side. So left female energy, right male energy. When you think about how do I know if I'm in balance? Listening to your body, to your experiences. Are you aggressive when you need to be, or are you aggressive all the time? Are you able, like Kamari was speaking, show love and not more of an authoritative figure when it's not needed? Or are you mostly going in and strong? So finding that self, are you meek and not speaking your truth and using your voice? So these are things. So when you look at unbalanced energy for males, think overgiving, the need to people please, giving up your personal time and needs for others, poor personal standards, and energy leakage, leaking everywhere. For the female side, think of feeling unworthy. When you hear that a lot, like, oh, maybe that happened because I'm not worthy, or it's just me. Like in those negative tones and narrative that we carry, those could be generational traumas and just trauma kind of narrative. So please be mindful of that. Feeling guilty, lost, lonely in a group of people. So when I look at balancing and strong, feeling strong right now as a female, it's actually saying my story without shame, without guilt. It's again learning how to say no, putting healthy boundaries, um, knowing when enough is enough, and not having to fix everything, and not having to show up all the time. So for me, I think when you think of strong, is we need to change that that definition. We have the power, and we do have gifts, but are you open to those gifts, or do you have a negative connotation and a negative meaning to being a healer? We all naturally gifted. Is tapping into those. So for me, strong means a lot, but it also means speaking my truth as a woman.
Thank you. Again, a lot of powerful stuff here. We're gonna have two more questions. Madison will ask this question, and then followed by Melina asking our question before we turn it over to Alicia, who will kick off the Q&A.
So I am going to be asking this question directly to Kamari and to Dr. Tracy. What are signs to look for to note that our body is out of alignment? And before you answer that, I really just want to say, like, everything that has been said so far has been hitting so hard. I've been sitting here smiling and like low-key a little bit crying, but happy tears. Because I'm like, it feels good to know that like I am not the only one going through this. And I'm going through this at a very young age too. Like I'm 21 and I'm going through a lot of this realizing my masculine and feminine energies, and like, cause I've been masculine my whole life because I was the only girl in a house with a single mother and boys. So all I knew was like this masculine energy, this like, I can't take any BS from anyone, this, you know, like, don't try me, don't test me, this aggressiveness. And I'm now learning to like be more feminine, and it's actually helped me realize when my body is out of alignment. But I'll let you guys continue and answer that question. So what are the signs to look for to note that your body is out of alignment? And again, this is for Kamari and Dr. Tracy.
Okay. I think as women, we're really in tune with our bodies. Oftentimes we'll go to the doctor, we'll be like, hey, there's something wrong. They'll do like a basic blood work, right? And they'll be like, ma'am, there's nothing wrong with you. And for a lot of women, that leads to a lot of frustration. But the one thing I will say is that if there's something that you feel that there's off in your body, there is. And like I talked earlier about all the ways that it shows up in the body. But one of the main things that, you know, we might find is pain. Pain showing up in different parts of the body. And that's probably like one of the top complaints as an acupuncturist that I see in my office is people complaining of pain, whether it's neck pain, back pain, shoulder pain. And so pain is a huge thing that I see in my practice. And that is one of the main ways that I see people's body are out of alignment. And it's just signs, our body's telling us that there's something off and we should check deeper into it. And I think this is where like advocacy comes into play when we're talking about medicine. If you don't find a doctor who you feel will look a little bit deeper, see it the next one. And if you're not going to the doctor, go to the doctor. And so that is one thing that I will say, like, listen to your body, believe your body, and act on it.
Dr. Tracy and Kamari, and for all the panelists, can you make sure you, again, populate your information, how people can connect with you for all of the panelists? Thank you, in the chat.
I'll also be accumulating a list of all the books and articles that they are referencing here, and I'll be sending that out to everyone who has registered for this event.
To build off of what Dr. Tracy said, she hit it. She hit it on the head. I was just going to say the biggest way for you to know when you are out of alignment is to know what your baselines are. I'm a very big advocate for listening to your body, which is why I strongly, strongly recommend learning meditation, because I always say that prayer is your way of talking to God or your higher self or your life force energy, and meditation is letting it speak to you. And so just like, when your physical body is out of alignment by, pain, as Dr. Tracy said, fatigue, sugar cravings, headaches, and things like that, your spiritual body speaks to you just as much. And once you are noticing that you're having thoughts that make you feel inadequate, negative self-talk, anxiety, stress, and all those things are indications that you are not living in the present moment, and which can easily take you out of alignment. Because you're operating either in the past or you're operating in the future. Either way, those moments don't exist anymore. So learning to detach from them and being right here and understanding, that everything right here is okay. I'm breathing, I'm here, I'm present, and those things will help bring you back to your highest self.
If I could just add to that real quick, and Kamari can probably speak to this, that one of the things I've learned about with chakras, and she also talked about being conscious about what foods you're eating. You can also, and you might have stated this, but one of the things that I have done, like when one of my chakras is out of alignment, is I made sure to eat certain foods. And I definitely recommend chanting. So like you can find these guided meditations like on YouTube, so it's free. So if you're on here, you're like, I don't have healthcare, I don't even know where to start, you can at least start there, YouTube University. But one of the things I like, and I am a person who likes to tap into all different types of spiritualities, and so getting into very basic Buddhism and chanting and Om and trying to clear like your throat and your heart chakra. So yeah, at this time, if it's okay, I can introduce Alicia again and go ahead, and I have some questions for Alicia. And the reason why we wanted to kind of keep Alicia towards the end is because Alicia is running for office. And so I wanted everyone to kind of listen to all of the experts in health and mental health. And now we want to apply it because we are working to declare racism a public health crisis, right? And so for Alicia, the questions that we have for you is, first, how do you prioritize your own physical and mental health doing the work you do as an activist? And, I'm going to speak it, you're going to be elected, doing the work you're going to do as mayor of New Britain. And what ways do you think our elected officials can prioritize the well-being of Black and Brown women? And lastly, how do you plan on prioritizing women's health once you're elected?
Right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. First, I wanted to start by thanking Corinne and thanking Lil Delise for inviting me to be on this panel. This was absolutely amazing. I mean, to echo what some other people said, I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. A lot of issues I've experienced, so I'm really grateful that y'all organized this. So I guess for the first question, in terms of how I prioritize my own mental and physical health, I have a few things I do. One is setting boundaries around phone calls, emails, messages. So I don't prioritize anything after 9 o'clock. It can wait in the morning. If it's an emergency, somebody will call me and let me know. But I try to set that boundary for myself. Otherwise, I will literally be checking and responding all the time. The other thing that I like to do is bullet journaling, which for those who don't know, it's kind of like a planner / journal that you create yourself. And I like to use that at night because my head is always spinning with things I have to do, with ideas, with all kinds of stuff. So I use my bullet journal. I write whatever I have to do or whatever I'm thinking about down, and then I can kind of let my mind rest. I can relax. I can go to sleep. Social media breaks and just taking even a few days or a week off of social media, because that in itself can be really taxing on your mental, emotional health. taking time to do nothing or sleeping. And then for me spiritually, I'm a Muslim, so praying, practicing Muslims pray 5 times a day. I don't always pray 5 times a day, but I do try to take little moments throughout the day just for mindfulness, just for meditation, just for kind of reflecting on God, reflecting on everything that happened. And I think now that Ramadan is coming up in a few weeks, that will be kind of a reset for me where I can kind of reflect on the last year and focus on myself and self-improvement. So those are a few things I do. In terms of what ways can our elected officials prioritize the well-being of Black and Brown women, just to name a few kind of policies that I can think of off the top of my head, ensuring accessible and affordable mental health services. So even people who have Husky may not have a therapist that can go to near them. We know that CT does not have the best public transportation system, so oftentimes there are other barriers that stop particularly Black and Brown women from getting the help they need. Similarly, paid sick leave and equitable pay are all things that disproportionately impact Black and Brown women. And I think also their health, universal health care, specifically addressing healthcare problems in women's prisons. I've heard stories about incarcerated women here in Connecticut. And for those who don't know our incarceration system here, the women's prisons majority Black and Latinx women. So making sure you're addressing the healthcare problems, making sure they have the feminine hygiene products they need, the quality of care in the prison facilities are definitely subpar. So those are a few ways that I think probably mostly at the state and federal level that elected officials can address this. And in terms of how I'm going to prioritize this when I'm elected, I think the first thing is just kind of going back to the basics. Food security, affordable housing, these very basic needs, if they aren't fulfilled, are extremely stressful to deal with. And it's really hard to tell somebody that they need to go to a therapist across town when they're having all of these other issues, just their basic needs. So I think that is probably one of the biggest things. For New Britain, I'm supporting the creation of more affordable housing instead of these kind of luxury housing that is popping up. The second thing is addressing access to mental health. So like I said, putting counselors, social workers, therapists in the areas where particularly poor people and Black and Brown people are living so that they're in their neighborhoods. It's not difficult for them to get to. Stop the criminalization of girls in school. New Britain does have SROs in our school system. Just 2 years ago in 2019, a young Latina girl was arrested by the two officers for trespassing. And this has an adverse effect on a lot of girls in the New Britain community at a young age. And again, the SROs disproportionately target Black and Brown boys typically, but in terms of girls, again, it's still disproportionately targeting Black and Brown. So addressing the criminalization is important too. That's why I'm committed to not only removing the SROs from the school system, but also giving that money to the Board of Education so that they can provide culturally competent and responsive mental health counselors, because that's the direction that we need to be going in terms of young girls. And then the last one has to do with what Corinne just said. So this year, New Britain declared racism a public health crisis, but that's literally all they did. They didn't do anything else after that. And so for me, it needs to be taken a step further. So I want to support the creation of a committee in New Britain that will conduct an intersectional study on the impact of race alongside gender, sexuality, and kind of other identity categories, and to issue recommendations to the city that the city will then act on. So we have the declaration, we have the study, and then we have concrete actions that are specific to the New Britain community. So those are a few ideas I have. But again, I want to thank everybody on this panel. This has been amazing. This has been so helpful. So many resources were shared. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you so much. This is a perfect segue to questions, comments, feedback, suggestions from all the attendees, participants. We do have our tech person. If you can unmute anyone who would like to speak, who's an attendee, share their feedback, their comments, now is the time to do so. Or if you want to type in any questions that you have as well. There's been so many, so I'm scrolling through all of them. Melina, I believe you had a question.
Yeah, I do have a question. Actually, this one is, I mean, it's directed for, I guess, Akila. It could be anybody who answers, but I guess my question, I personally, so I'm part of the LGBTQIA plus community, as well as being multiracial. I'm, you know, Afro-Latina, I'm Native American, and like, so I'm mixed, and I have this, you know, this thing, part of me that people don't understand. And so, I mean, this happens for everybody, but specifically is different for being a woman of color and having my family, you know, being, you know, rooted in their ways and their cultures. And so, I really would like to ask this question about how can a parent be there for their child if their child identifies as the LGBTQ plus community and the rest of the family doesn't understand what this means? Because for me, that's actually very personal.
So before we started, I kind of knew about this question. I was going to say you can take the recording off, but I'll just speak freely. I kind of want to start, thank you for that question. I want to start with a story. I graduated high school around 1998 and
I'm sorry, Kayla, did you just say to take the recording off?
Oh no, you can leave it.
Okay.
At first I thought about, you know, taking the recording off, but I think I'll just leave it.
Okay. All right.
Hopefully I won't get too emotional because part of it has to do, there's a story in there with my daughter. So in 1998, I graduate high school and I go into college as a freshman, never been in a relationship in my whole life. And I'm approached by a female. I thought nothing of it. We become partners. And I bring, you know, this woman home to my family and totally was rejected and felt very shameful. And my mom decided to have a conversation with me alone in the car. And she said, you know, that what I was doing was wrong and that, you know, that pretty much I was disowned from the family. I was never to speak of this relationship. And, you know, for me, I just felt really horrible about myself. I didn't really understand. It did not stop me from being whom I was. It actually just made me want to be stronger as a person. And then I'll forward to maybe about 3 years ago, my daughter in high school comes, I go into her room and I ask her, you know, what's up? And she's like, I got to tell you something, but don't tell daddy. So you know, she begins to tell me this story. She's like, I think I'm in a relationship and, you know, I've never been in this type of relationship. It's kind of serious. And I was like, oh, that's great. You know, awesome. And she proceeds to say, but it's with another female. And at that moment, I just felt this big rush of energy, warmth and exhilaration to be, you know, be able to break this ancestral, I would call it curse, because, you know, that heaviness that had been put onto me, I was able to lighten my daughter and let her know it was okay. I guess me being that forever student of this world, just constantly ways that I can help my daughter or anyone going through a situation like that, you know, just actively like really listening to what's going on around you, remaining curious about like, you know, what people are saying, but really finding that piece of your heart where, you know, you accept yourself for who you are. And if you ever need to reach out for help, you know, there's always folks out there, but not everyone will always understand but we can do our best, using our heart to explain who we are, how we feel. But I just feel like in this life, we will not everybody's going to understand everything. But if we can come to agreement, to not understand each other, but not to put any hate or heaviness upon the person that doesn't understand you, I think we'll be able to progress. And, just teaching my daughter about certain things about boundaries was really important for me. Teaching her about different sex and just being really open with her from a very, very young age. Just because I know the world that we live in. Just allowing her to, really identify certain patterns that she sees and giving her that opportunity to learn different techniques that are good for self-love and for healing, like journaling, which we've been talking about. And different techniques for intimacy and love. So I guess that's my answer.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So we've been getting a lot of communication through the chat from our attendees, just saying thank you so much. Phenomenal. The panelists are phenomenal. This has been so inspiring. Just what I needed. Thank you everyone for sharing your insight, your experience. This was an awesome event. So many folks, really amazing information that you have all provided tonight. And I'm not sure if it looks like someone has a question. Joy. So let's see.
Hi, you probably can't see me. Hold on one second. I'm here.
It's okay. We could hear you though. You can ask your question, Joy.
Okay, perfect. So I was on my laptop and my phone because I can't see everybody on my phone, but I wanted to be on my laptop. Anyways, I guess I have a question for all of the panelists. So I have been recently getting more curious about crystals and the work that they do, especially when it comes to healing my body. And I recently found out from my gynecologist that I have a cyst on my ovary. And I was pretty upset about it at first, but then, quickly after, I was like, you know what? I'm still alive and I'm really healthy. But they're suggesting, oh, hi. They're like suggesting like surgery perhaps. And that's not a route that I want to go through. So and I'm only 23 and everything. So my chances of fertility going down is small with surgery, but there's still that chance, and I just don't want that to happen, especially as a Black woman. I really want to be able to carry it or spread, give life from my own genes. I don't know, but of course I can change down the line. So I wanted to ask that question of what things could I do to help myself, and maybe I should have said not to record that part because like medical history, but it is what it is.
Okay. I don't know if any of the panelists want to go first. I do have PCOS myself, which is polycystic ovary syndrome. And this is something I've been dealing with since I was 17. I'll let the panelists first, but there are things that I've done for myself that have really helped me out. But I'll let the panelists speak first if they have anything to say.
I would like to say something. When it comes to like PCOS or other issues with developing cysts, there's things that you could look into when it comes to testing, like testing your hormones, seeing where your hormones are at, and then using tools like definitely crystal healing is a tool, but then you also want to look into other healing practices, whether it's herbals or there's like Mayan massage. There's a lot of things, but you have to make sure it's like individualized to you as a person. and make sure that, you know, whatever you're doing is safe for you and medically safe and in your best interest. So definitely keep all of those things in mind when you're making those kind of medical decisions. But I understand there's always other tools you could use to help yourself.
Mhm. Thank you, Dr. Tracy.
So definitely what she said, like to piggyback off of that, especially the herbal part. There are a lot of foods and teas that are really good for your reproductive system, for women in general. I personally, Kamari, this is actually because of the first time I met you, during that women's um, discussion that over in, I think, in Norwich at that hotel. But you talking about your experience with herbal teas and stuff like made me really switch over to being pescatarian, and just kind of like the way when I was diagnosed, I was 17 and I was eating very unhealthy. I was an athlete. I was working out all the time, but what I was eating was not good, and that had a huge thing to do with why why my PCOS was affecting me the way it did. Um, and this is personal, but like I don't mind sharing this. I was getting my period every 3 months, so it wasn't coming often. My testosterone was off the charts, um, and I I think after I got to college and they had me on like 3 different pills, to kind of like try to maintain my PCOS and like not make it so drastic and stuff. But I recently just got off of all of those meds last June, because I had become pescatarian and I had been pescatarian for I believe like 6 or 7 months. The medication was starting to actually affect my period cycle and affect my menstruation and affect my feminine health. And so I stopped doing that and I've been off of it since. And my period has been regular. I I rarely get pains in my stomach from the cyst.
Mhm.
My weight loss it goes easy, far easier. It's heavily a diet thing. Like PCOS is like having that is such a diet thing. It's different in each person, as Dr. Tracy said. So like find what works for you, but teas and food like really do a lot of wonders in just like understanding your body, like meditating on it, like feeling your body more, like literally feeling your body more, and like understanding how it works, understanding what works for you is definitely like the most important thing.
Mhm. Thank you so much. I know we've talked about, or I've been listening to a lot of you talking about diet changes, and that's something that I'm really curious about also considering when it comes to my health. I know my doctor didn't specifically say that I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. She said like I have a dermoid cyst, but I think there are some similarities when it comes to how can I manage that as well. So thank you all for sharing your experiences as well and offering your expertise. I'm writing everything down. Herbal teas and maybe doing some really big major diet changes. Like I love fish, so I can be a pescatarian.
I did want to build a little bit off of what Madison had said. I'm going to speak towards like my own personal experience. I have thyroid issues. My mother had thyroid cancer. She had to have her thyroid removed. And I want you guys to follow me as I take you through this full circle. When you think about, we spoke about how the body manifests as trauma and masculine energy, feminine energy. Madison spoke about having a strong, dominant masculine energy in her family, and now her testosterone levels are very high, which is what they are in men. I have these thyroid issues, which is in my throat. I'm currently working through a lot of throat chakra work, finding my voice, learning how to speak and talk for myself. So when we speak about listening to your body and how things show up, like that that in itself, this whole conversation that we have just came back full circle. And I wanted to recommend, this is like one of my favorite books. I did put it in the group chat, and it basically helps you heal your body energetically as well through meditation and understanding that, you know, once you start to heal yourself by saying to yourself, I am healed, and truly believing it and stepping into the energy of what that is like to walk as a healed and whole human being, your body can genetically start to heal itself on that level, on a molecular level. We have the power to do that as well. It's very deep and it takes a lot of work. But once you start to rewire your thought patterns and the energy that is surrounding you, you have the power to start to heal your body energetically as well. And that is also one of our gifts, people, that we need to embrace.
I will definitely be ordering all of these books that have been put in the chat as well. I couldn't see everybody else that was talking just now. Madison, thank you so much earlier, and Kamari, thank you so much as well.
So we have time for one more question and or comment from our attendees. Kiana, IT, would you be able to unmute Kiana, please?
I'm here, sorry. Sorry, I was in and out. I'm at work. I'm a mental health worker too, so I work in residential, so my clients need me sometimes. But I just had a question in terms of, like, I really enjoyed the conversation and how everybody got started in this journey. You know, I had similar experiences, but I just want to know is like, how can are there any centralized communities that we have in Connecticut that do this work? Or how can we foster a better community and kind of foster better movement into holistic healing to bring it to more people where this may not be accessible, or people who are not getting this information? So that's just kind of my question.
I'm willing to speak on that if no one else has anything to say. Anyone? Okay, so that's one of my goals, and I'm going to be very transparent with you guys and manifest through everyone who's on this panel. And forgive me if I get emotional, because all of a sudden I just got emotional. But that is one of my goals, is to create a space where you can come and receive this, kind of like the church, so to speak, but like healing and holistic modalities and spiritual baths and naturopathic doctors, and have it all in one space, and have them all across the country and eventually all across the world, where it's healing for us, by us. And it tells our story when we walk into the room, because, you know, a lot of the, what is it called? Our systems are based on white males. It's not, you know, based on us, a lot of the information. So, you know, we're receiving these treatments that aren't necessarily meant for our body types always. And a lot of our doctors aren't necessarily like specializing in like our care, Black and brown community. So I think that would be beautiful for all of us to be able to come together and start something like that. And call it the healing space, call it something. And then we can all have that one place to start at least. And from there, it branches off where we can recommend different, you know, light workers and healers for whatever is specific to your journey, if you need more, you know what I mean? But that is definitely a goal of mine. And if you are feeling that goal, DM me, let's link up, let's get this work, because the time is now.
So I'm going to speak because we're doing the work, and I would like to invite anyone. Safe Passages, we do both traditional and spiritual work. We do baths. We do anything from clearing, from cleansing, for helping you get to your ancestry. I mean, that's part of us. We decided to open Safe Passages as 3 Latina women licensed social workers and Reiki masters. We're moving to New Britain in May, and we're planning to hold healing circles. We're planning to do live groups, chats. So it starts with us. So even in this community today, it starts here. So if you want any information, if you want to do anything collaboration with us, feel free. I mean, I already talked to Akila. Kamari, you mentioned us already, so you know us. I mean, we're here. So just, we're out there. You don't need to look far. And the more that we embrace our gifts and work through our own traumas and do our work, the more we get connected and heal as a community. So I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be part of this beautiful, wonderful healing panel.
I want to just add a quick comment. I'm just grateful for the comment, Kamari, because I feel the same exact way. I feel like there aren't places that, Black, Brown, Latinx folks, women of color, you will not see us in most of these settings. I was so grateful to go to Safe Passages recently, and I'm so excited to collaborate with women, anyone who is willing to do this. That is my goal. I want to, all the gifts that have been, just put on me, I want to be able to give those gifts back to others, especially the women that I work with at Nod-Chalk Hospital Journey House. Those girls have been through a lot of sexual trauma, and I want a space, a continuum of care for these women, young ladies. So I share the passion, I share the community, and want this collective space where we can be seen, heard, and understood. And thank you guys for being here. Thank you for the conversation. I'm just so uplifted. I feel empowered from this webinar today. I'm just truly grateful.
If I could quickly just add something, please reach out to y'all governor. Email Ned Lamont and tell him to declare racism as a public health crisis. And do that as often as you can, and put that on your social media and tell him, bombard his email with that. And then you can go to, I think there's a CSA.gov something, I don't know what it is, where you can find out who your local officials are, like who your state representative is and all of that. And then email them as well and let them know that we need to make this declaration. The bills that are on the line right now are not perfect, but it's a start. But yes, because as we are talking about mental health, as we are talking about emotional health and physical health, all of that has to be addressed on an institutional systemic level, honestly. I keep hearing how wonderful Dr. Tracy is, and I wish I had private insurance because I would hit her up. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that that there are reasons why certain people don't have certain insurances to be able to have access to certain clinicians and providers. And that is why we really have to make this declaration. And I would also say that to all of the Black and brown women, if there's anything standing in your way of seeking mental health or getting your well visit or your mammogram, something like transportation, something like the food pantry is going to close, so I can't go because I got to make that instead of going to my doctor's appointment, please reach out to Power Up. That's what grassroots organizations are here for, to kind of fill in those gaps. So that way we can say, hey, don't take the bus. We're going to send you an Uber gift card because that bus is going to get you there too late, so you can get to your appointment on time. Don't worry about the food pantry closing. Go to your appointment. Go to your therapy appointment. Go to your well visit appointment. Go to your GYN appointment. We will deliver food to your home for you and your family. Everyone here, it's important also to know that there is nothing witchy about chakras, about meditation, about mindfulness. There's absolutely nothing witchy about that. It is real. It is in our roots. So please, look it up and reach out to these women on social media. And yeah, I just wanted to add that a little bit.
Thank you so much, Corinne. Power Up CT has done phenomenal work. And if you haven't followed them yet, please make sure to follow them on social media as well. So we are wrapping up now, just looking at the time. But I want to allow our panelists to give one last word or comment, thoughts before we wrap up. And I want to make sure to give a very heartfelt thank you to Soraya, to Akila, to Dr. Tracy, to Nilsa, to Alicia, to Kamari, and our host committee as we put all of this together, Karen, Madison, Melina, and thank you also to our tech support, Eva. We really appreciate it. And now for the last word from our panelists.
Well, thank you for organizing this. And I was telling, I want to say Councilwoman Bermudez, like I just want to say that. But I was telling her, like, I can't wait until we are able to all come together in person and do these kind of meetings, and that we could all share with each other all of our forms of healing and just come together in conversation, because nothing beats in person, right? So this was so awesome, and thank you for organizing this, all of you.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to, everyone who puts this together. From the day that I found out about it, I was always a yes. I'm so grateful. I hope that we continue to have these conversations, and I hope that we continue to grow as a community and just not really seeing each other as, different, and just learning, wanting to know about the person's difference instead of, putting hate, and just hoping that we all connect in love. I really appreciate my time here. And thank you.
I appreciate all of you as well. Thank you for allowing me to share my story with you guys. I'm looking forward to connecting with each and every single one of you, and collaborating and continue to build. Virtual is great, but with all this vaccine talk, hopefully we are back outside very soon, because connecting in person, the energy, if you guys think this energy is great, listen, that in-person energy will have you full until Thanksgiving. So I hope we can all connect further. And I wanted to leave you guys with this thought to ponder, because I know we're all women here and women of color here. So, before we had male pharaohs, before the male even came into this picture, all the pharaohs were women, okay? So know that it goes real deep. That bloodline, that string, that it runs really deep, okay? So connect with that, sit with that, tap into that, and know that. And thank you all.
I want to say thank you for everyone and for the space. Very powerful. And now is 8:10 and I have to go to sleep, and I don't even know how I'm going to bring myself down. Meditation and some tea, yes, but love it. And just hoping that we have more of these, more openness, more questions, more, even if it's questions from the participants, and then we go answer them, like just questions in general, and just that unity that we need. I'm just grateful. And I'm going to end by saying I feel honored, and just my heart is filled so much with love. And that's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all of the panelists. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Soraya. Thank you to all of the attendees. Again, like I said, this is the first of many. We are already talking about for Pride, how we can put a panel together, especially, having emphasis on the trans community, especially with all the bills going around in different states, trying to further marginalize and oppress, our trans sisters and brothers. So this is the first of many. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
so much, everyone. And with that, we wish you a very blessed evening and take all these words of wisdom. You have all the contacts. Follow them on social media, go on their websites, reach out to them, and stay blessed and empowered. Thank you all, and have a
Thank
great
you all
night.
so much.